Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're taking a stack of current California sources, and they range from this really hidden history to, well, immediate policy crises that are playing out right now.
Hmm.
Our mission is to uncover how different kinds of perseverance, both in the past and today, are, actively shaping the state's future.
And that contrast is just so important here. We're looking at two really different kinds of service. On one hand, you have this foundational, often unrecognized military service that literally built parts of the American West.
Right.
And then you have the modern service of our social safety nets, which are under this immense pressure right now.
So we've got the historical context of the Buffalo Soldiers right alongside huge legislative changes like AB 1454, the complexities of medical reform.
All while trying to manage this volatility with federal funding. It's a lot.
It is. We've got deep cuts of history and some really high-stakes policy discussions ahead. We want to give you the clearest picture of what's happening, so let's start with the history.
Let's do it.
Okay, let's unpack this story of the Buffalo Soldiers. They were the nation's first peacetime African-American military regiments and, immortalized later in pop culture.
But what's so fascinating is understanding who these men actually were
Yeah.
and the deep irony in their service. The units were formed way back in 1866.
Right after the Civil War.
Exactly. As 6 regiments, but they were later consolidated into the 9th and 10th Cavalry and the 24th and 25th Infantry. And these were formerly enslaved people, freemen, and Black Civil War soldiers. They were the first.
And that irony you mentioned is it's so central to their story. I mean, many of these men enlisted with the promise of full citizenship through the 14th Amendment.
Mm-hmm.
But while they were serving with incredible distinction, they faced this relentless systemic racism. They were denied the very rights they were fighting for and often got, inferior supplies, bad equipment.
And the nickname itself, Buffalo Soldiers, is such a powerful symbol. It's believed to have been given to them by Native American
A
tribes.
sign of respect, right.
Sources suggest it was, a sign of respect for their brave fighting spirit, maybe their physical appearance. But either way, it was an honorific. It was admiration from their adversaries.
And it really wasn't just combat. This is the part that surprised me, how much they contributed to just building the West.
Oh, absolutely. They were the unsung builders. They constructed roads, telegraph lines, they escorted mail and settlers.
One source even noted they were often the first firefighters in these remote Western towns that had, never even seen Black soldiers before.
And that legacy is so deeply tied to California's most famous natural landscapes. This is the real deep cut here.
This is what I wanted to get to.
The Buffalo Soldiers served as some of our country's very first national park rangers. Specifically, units from the 9th Cavalry and 24th Infantry protected Sequoia and Yosemite.
Wow. So they were guarding these places from poachers, illegal logging.
Squatters, fires, all of it. They were crucial, especially before Yosemite was handed over to the National Park Service in 1916.
And the key figure here is Captain Charles Young. His story is incredible.
It is. He was only the 3rd African-American to graduate from West Point.
And he became the first Black superintendent of a national park, leading the charge in Sequoia in 1903.
And his leadership was so practical, his men in the 9th Cavalry, they built the very first trail to the top of Mount Whitney that year.
That's just an immense contribution, especially when you think about the barriers he was facing.
Unbelievable. And his full recognition took a long, long time. But following a recommendation from Kentucky's governor, Captain Young was posthumously promoted to general by President Biden in 2021.
Wow.
Yeah. Their story as a segregated unit officially ended when President Truman integrated the military. But their history just reminds us that true patriotism is often about fighting for what your country could become, demanding that inclusion.
And that theme of fighting for inclusion, for basic necessity, it just brings us so sharply into the modern day.
It really does.
If their service was about fighting for a nation that would one day recognize them, today's fight in California is about, well, fighting for basic existence and security. And it's largely tied to pressure from the federal level.
Precisely. We are facing an immediate healthcare affordability cliff. The Biden-era federal subsidies, the ones that increased financial aid for health insurance, they're set to expire December 31st.
Unless Congress acts.
Unless Congress acts. And the funding for it was, well, it was left out of the latest federal proposal.
The numbers here are just staggering. If there's no federal action, the average monthly premium for Californians who rely on these tax credits could nearly double.
We are talking about a 97% rise in 2026.
97%. It's not sustainable.
No. And so the question becomes, what can California do? The state has tried to create a buffer, allocating $190 million to help households up to 150% of the federal poverty level.
But experts are warning that it's not enough, is it?
It can't match the scale. It just can't. Even with that state aid, premiums are still expected to jump by an average of 10.3% in 2026. Dr. Monica Soni warned it creates a perfect storm.
A perfect storm because it's happening at the same time as medical eligibility checks and cuts to food assistance.
Exactly.
Wait, so just to be clear for you listening, even with California putting in $190 million, premiums are still projected to go up by over 10% next year.
That's right. It just shows you how vital that federal funding really is.
And that crisis spills right over into food security. The federal slowdowns are causing serious delays in SNAP benefits. Here, that's CalFresh.
And it's affecting 5.5 million Californians.
We are seeing community actions step up, though. Josh Friday, he launched Operation Feed California.
Right, encouraging people to volunteer, to donate. And the state is fast-tracking $80 million in emergency support straight to the food banks to meet this demand.
But the human cost really grounds this whole political debate, doesn't it?
It does. We have the example of Tasha Reynolds, a single mother in San Diego. She works 2 jobs.
Mm-hmm.
She'd been waiting over 3 weeks for her CalFresh funds. The delay forced her to rely on community pantries to, cut portions for her family.
As she said, it's not just policy, it's people's most fundamental needs.
Yeah.
Okay, let's shift now to the long game. Because even while managing these immediate crises, California is pushing through 2 massive structural reforms in health and education, and these will reshape the state for decades.
Let's start with education. The reform here is aimed squarely at the state's literacy gap. Governor Newsom signed Assembly Bill 1454.
AB 1454, right. This requires new instructional materials and a lot of teacher training connected to the science of reading.
Which is evidence-based. For K-8 students, it is a huge shift away from some of those older, less effective methods.
And the structural change is desperately needed. California ranks pretty poorly, 33rd overall in 4th grade reading proficiency.
And more critically, the sources show only 2 out of 10 Black students were reading at a 3rd grade level.
That is a shocking statistic.
It is. And advocates who supported this bill warn that these literacy struggles dramatically increase the risk of students entering this school-to-prison pipeline.
So the law is backed by a $200 million investment for professional development to make sure teachers actually have the tools they need.
Exactly.
Okay, now, the other massive overhaul, healthcare, Medi-Cal. It covers over 14 million Californians, and it's transforming through the CalAIM initiative.
CalAIM it's a monumental effort. CalAIM stands for California Advancing and Innovating Medi-Cal.
So what's the key insight here? What are they trying to do?
The state is really committing to treating social needs as being just as critical as medical needs. It is explicitly aimed at closing these long-standing racial disparities by focusing on high-need groups.
And how does that actually work on the ground for people?
Well, it works through 2 main support programs. One is Enhanced Care Management, or ECM. It gives high-need members a single care manager to coordinate everything.
Medical, behavioral, social services.
All of it. And the other is Community Supports. These are non-medical services, things like housing assistance, medically supportive meals, or even caregiver respite. It's about catching people before they end up in the ER because of a social crisis.
Medical is also undergoing some really crucial long-term changes that you need to pay attention to, especially if you rely on the system.
Yes. These changes are primarily focused on older adults, people with disabilities, and undocumented adults.
The first set of changes starts January 1st, 2026.
Right. For older adults and people with disabilities, the asset test is coming back. It limits assets to $130,000 for one person. It's designed to target Medi-Cal to those with greater financial need.
And the next big shift affects undocumented residents. On that same day, January 1st, 2026, there will be an enrollment freeze. Undocumented adults, ages 19 and older, will no longer be able to newly enroll in full-scope Medi-Cal.
They'll still be eligible for emergency care, but that door for full coverage is closing for new applicants.
And that extends to dental coverage too, right?
It does. By July 1st, 2026, full dental benefits will end for that same group. Again, emergency dental care remains. And critically, pregnant people keep their full coverage. It's a series of targeted cuts.
And looking even further ahead to 2027, we see even more structural shifts.
Correct. Beginning January 1st, 2027, work requirements will kick in for non-disabled adults aged 19 to 64.
So they have to prove 80 hours a month of work or something similar.
Or similar activity. Could be volunteering, job training, schooling, something like that, to maintain their coverage.
But there are a lot of exceptions to this, I take it.
There are, yes. The sources are clear on that. Pregnant people, parents of young children, certain students, they're generally exempt. But it is a fundamental shift. And one more for 2027.
Go ahead.
By July 1st of that year, small monthly premiums will be required for certain undocumented adults to maintain that full scope coverage.
So with all of these complex changes, the affordability cliff, the CalFresh delays, the medical shifts, the actionable advice seems to be the same through it all.
It is.
Keep your contact information updated with your county office and respond to any renewal mail immediately.
Absolutely. That is the number one thing. The system is moving fast, and you do not want to lose coverage because of a simple administrative issue.
Okay, so what does this all mean? We've traced the history of service in the West, with the Buffalo Soldiers building roads and protecting our parks, and we've set that against today's fight to just maintain essential lifelines.
Whether it's keeping health premiums affordable or making sure food banks are stocked.
The theme is just this continuous perseverance.
And the sources really highlight that California is navigating massive policy turbulence. It's constantly having to act as a state-level stopgap against federal uncertainty.
Yeah.
The story of the Buffalo Soldiers is about fighting for a better, more inclusive future. And I think these current health and education reforms show that the state is, in its own way, still fighting for that vision through systemic change.
So here's a final thought for you. The Buffalo Soldiers, including Captain Charles Young, they were the first park rangers and firefighters in huge areas of California. Today, when you travel a road they built or you visit a natural wonder they protected, are we honoring their long fight for inclusion and citizenship by ensuring our modern safety nets, our educational foundations, the very things that enable social mobility, are strong enough to support all Californians? Something to think about.